So now that we know how to set up our weapons, let's see the other stuff that has to do with our weapons. For example, when you go into your weapon creator, okay, and save this, save a weapon. Let's make sure we have something to watch. We have all this. We've seen how everything works. Now let's see what we can actually add on top of our weapon, which is, in our case, let's take the M4. Let's see it over here. And that has to do with the weapon model hook and also, you know, the extras, and we're going to also see the extras creator. Now, the weapon model hook is optionally, so you can have a weapon that doesn't have anything like this, and this has to do with everything that works inside on the weapon level. So for example, particles, the animator for the weapon, okay, removing and enabling the magazine, and everything else you might want to add later, and we might see some of them, like modifications, okay, like changing the sights, stuff like that. So let's see the actual script. Let's go weapon model hook. As I said, this is entirely an optional script. I mean a weapon, you do not need to have it on your weapons, but if you want to have it, then you know it will make it more polished, because it's what will fire particles, what will play the animations on your weapon and stuff like that. Now the secret to this is that it can work without having assigned anything over here, or without having assigned any particles, okay, and without even having an animator, because we want to have different levels. So if you want to, you know, make it a full feature, like having particles, having all that, then you can also do it. The references we're going to need, of course, we need the animator, any particle system that is underneath our weapon, the magazine on the weapon, okay, the actual game object, which is this, is what we are also going to be disabling or enabling when we are reloading. Okay, the magazine prefab and weapon ID. The magazine prefab has to do with the actual item you throw when you reload, and I mean the actual item that has a rigid body on top of it, okay, and we throw it down when we reload again. The weapon ID, just in case we need it later, okay, where this can be used for a lot of stuff basically. So anyway, let's keep it around. The magazine object on the character's hand, okay, this has to do with the extras, and it's actually a game object that similarly to how we create our weapons, we create our items. On runtime, this will be a game object on the left hand, okay, but because the way we load our weapons, we also need a way to load the magazine item. Okay, this is a special item, if you will, so we need to know again the rig type for the magazine item and where to parent it. In this case, of course, is the left hand. This is what we are going to use, and we are also going to take it from the resources manager. Okay, magazine item, a reference to the bone helper, because we need to parent the magazine item mostly, okay, and the model rig. If we want to create audio, okay, because I do not have any audio effects on the project, the functionality is inside, but if you want to actually have audio into your into the game, just change this to true and make sure you have everything written as I did. Now, string holder is basically what the name says, it's just a class that we can save different strings, and in this case I'm using it for the audio, but you can save anything else you want. So for example, if I wanted audio, I will have of course turned create audio, and I will have said M4 reload effects or something like that, or basically the name of the audio effects. And this again has to do with not having to save all our audio clips into the actual game object, but having a database, which in this case of course is in our resource manager, and let's not do that. Okay, so basically that is, yeah, it's for quickly finding the names of audio effects and playing them when we want to, which is something we're not going to see in this case. Init, where this init from comes from the weapon manager. Of course we haven't seen the weapon manager yet, but we will see this in the future. And from the weapon manager we can get the bone helper and of course the target rig and update the model rig over here, and we do it here. We get the animator. Okay, this has to do with the animator of the actual weapon, not the animator of the player. And of course we find all our particles. We are going to assume that everything, every particle that is underneath this game object, then it has to do with our own weapons. Okay, we set up the reference for the bone helper, and then we go create the magazine instance, and if this is, we have enabled the create audio, then it's simply going to go add on this game object an audio source and going to assign it. To create a magazine instance, and let's see, it's over here. Okay, if there is no ID, we're not going to create it. We're going to look into the resources manager, and we're going to see if we can get the item we want with the ID we're passing for the current rig we have. Okay, if we didn't find any instances, then we're simply going to return. If we did find, we're going to instantiate the model prefab. We're going to parent it under the helper we want. Okay, we first of course we're going to find the helper, and then we're going to parent it under that helper. We're setting up the position, the Euler angles, the local scale. Okay, we've set up everything the way we need them, and for initialization we are sure that we're not going to need the magazine item active, so we're simply going to disable it. Now we have a few public functions because we use them, we call them based on our events or when we are shooting. Okay, throw magazine. For example, when we are reloading, we have an event hooked on the actual animations, and it will basically, at the moment we have our event, it's going to throw the prefab for the magazine. Okay, the one that actually has a game object, a rigid body on top of it. Okay, of course we need to find it first, and we do that because we know it has a rigid body, and because we know this is actually a game object inside our game. Okay, we're going to set it as in the object pool, so we actually have a budget of how many magazine prefabs we have instead of creating new ones. Now if of course the game object is null, then simply ignore it. There's two reasons why the game object, well actually there's only one reason why the game object can be null. We either do not have the game object inside the object pool list, or our ID is wrong. Okay, in any case we do not want any error, so if it's null then we're simply not going to do anything. We're going to change its transform position. Okay, and we're going to set it as the same as the magazine or weapon, and we need to go and find our rigid body, and we also of course need to check in case we forgot if we had anything on our rigid body, because we might forget to assign a rigid body on this. Okay, and if we do not find, then return there's something wrong. So yeah, again we do not want any errors. However, if there is a rigid body, then we're simply going to reset the velocity, and we do that because when you move your transform and it has a rigid body, the velocity will always keep staying the same. Okay, this doesn't affect the velocity, it just means that it will place it on the other position or the position you have over here, but it will keep the same velocity. Okay, so that will mean that if your item was falling, then that means it will be placed on this position and keep falling. So we set it, the direction we want is, just make it the same as our own transform route. Doesn't matter, add a torque and add some force. Okay, this is doesn't even need to be anything. Okay, then we just use from our statics class we've seen in the last video, we have a random offset between -2 and 2. Now, when we want to fire, we will call this function, which is, of course, if there is no anim and the animation is not initialized, okay, then it's going to, and not initialized, is initialized, then it's going to go and update set boolean, okay, static shoot to true. For each particle system we have in our other particles, we're going to emit 1, and if we have created the audio, then we're going to go into the audio, we're going to request an audio effects from the audio manager, okay, or get audio. This this does, it returns a class that has the audio clip and ID. Okay, so it's going to set it up as the audio source clip, and I should have probably also added an audio source dot play. Okay, simple as that. And probably we we should have done audio source dot play on awake to be false. Okay, so that's how you shoot, and if you have audio, then it will take the audio from the audio manager. These are basically hooks that has to do with when we want to open the magazine on hand and close the magazine on hand. Okay, we call this from events, and this also has to do with the string. The string holder is, we've seen the string holder, so for instance on fire we get it the gunshot for this weapon from our string holder. Okay, so this is the weapon hook. Let's see the item with the item creator, which has to do with creating the magazine on the hand and stuff like that. So this is very simple, especially compared to the weapon creator. So we need another scene. Let's not save, there's no need to save. Again, the same idea with the other, with the weapon creator. Have a creator, an extras creator in this case, and update, fix everything we want to have over here, save, and we get an extra item. We make this into a prefab and we add it into the resources manager. You can see that it's fairly simpler. We only have 6 values to worry about. So let's see the actual item, and it's still the same as the weapon, so that means we're still using a game object, and inside it we have an instance of the item class. Okay, item ID, the model prefab or the model we are creating inside the level, where we're going to parent it under local position, local oil, and local scale. And this will have to do with anything that it's not a weapon. So if you want to add torches, flashlight, or anything like that, okay, this will ensure that you are saving any model you want into the correct position, rotation, and scale. Okay, and you will also have a way to refer to it. So for example, I just use this for magazines, but if you want to use this to load, as I said, another weapon or another item, not weapon, again like torches and stuff like that, then this will make sure they are always instantiated on the correct place without having you to worry about going to controller and for each one then placing them in the correct position. Let's close the item. So this is the item. Okay, the item instance. There's no need to save. Let's close the weapon model hook, and we don't need any of this. And let's go to the extras creator. You can see that again I have an item instance. So this is the item we're going to be doing changes to, and we're going to clone this when we want to actually save it. So extras references, again the same idea with the weapon creator, model instance, extras animator, item model instance. We can keep this into the actual extras creator, but I think it's a little bit more organized this way, since we do not have to worry about having all these public variables. The extras animator is an animator that is in here, and the same way we had as the editor animator, but of course since in most items we can just place them in T pose, we won't have to worry that much about him. However, it still has the bone helper. Okay, animator, run the animator, and bone helper. We find references, and if we do not have a bone helper, we will add him. Well, actually, yeah, we need to have a bone helper. We add that from the extras creator. Okay, we initialize the bone helper, and we update the bone helper on our regular update. And if we have tick run animator, then it's also going to update the animator. Now these ones do not have actually an animator assigned or an animation, because as I said, this is a special case and we can just place the items into the T pose. But if you want to do something else with it, then by all means you can do it. And again, get bone helper. Okay, we pass a bone and it's just going to return us our bone helper, which inside will have the actual bone transform. Okay, this is it for the extras animator. Let's see the actual extras creator. Okay, load model. What model to load? Create an item, load an item, the item prefab we want to load, save an item, and in case we want to load a weapon, although I think, yeah, I do not do anything with this, so let's just delete it, just not be confused. A reference to our extras, or to our extras references anyway, and our current instance. We have all this. Okay, if something is null, then find it or assign it or add a new one and then assign it. Okay, our buttons, basically depending on the boolean that opens, we call the correct function. To load a model, it's very simple. Okay, if we have anything previous, if we do not have any model prefab, okay, we do not have a model, so do nothing. If we have a previous one, then destroy the previous model instance and then instantiate a new model instance. Okay, assign it, add an extras animator, add a bone helper, and everything else is going to go and update it by itself. And then we set repaint all, set dirty for both of these, both this game object and the extras reference, although I think yeah, this might be redundant. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Create item. To create a new item, we find the prefab. Okay, we take that from this model prefab, and it's just the item. Nothing special on this, just a simple game object with a model or anything else you might like. If we have something previously created, then we simply destroy it. we instantiate it again, and we have our target bone. We're of course going to find it from using our getBone helper, which we have inside our extras animator, and where we want the target bone will be the actual helper transform. From that, okay, we parent it under, we reset position and rotation, and we set up the target bone to be parented under, we break the parenting of the target bone in this case, because we do not care, the model can be anywhere, however it still needs just to be parented under the helper. We know that the helper will always be 0 in on the actual bone. Okay, so that leaves us to do anything we want. And the reason why I'm parenting the target bone over here is because if I want to grab it, I do not have to go inside my whole rig and go and find it. Okay, I just can simply find it from over here, left hand helper. Okay, and you will see that if I try to move it, then I cannot move it because the bone helper hard codes it to be on this position. Okay, save everything again, not that it matters, as I said. If we want to save the item, okay, if there is no model instance found, then we are aborting. Otherwise, we're going to find the item current instance. We're going to take local position, local rotation, and local scale from what we have into our item model instance. So basically, we are placing this game object, we are placing it, we are rotating it, we are doing anything we want to change with this, and this is where we actually save it. And we also want to make sure we are saving the local variables and not the world variables. Okay, then we create a new game object. We add to that new game object a name, just so that we can find it, easier. We add the item instance, and on that item instance we create an actual item class instance. Okay, we find it from here, and in our statics we have another function that what it does is going to do the same as with the copy weapon stats. Okay, takes from one class to the other, and you can see that it's just 6 it's just 6 variables, so it doesn't matter. Okay, we've saved our item. So finally, when we want to load the item, you can guess what we are doing. We have our checks first. Okay, we get the target item will be from the item prefab we have assigned at the actual instance. We copy what we had into a previous prefab into this one, into this guy. Okay, and then we destroy the model instance and we create the model prefab we had on that from that other game object for the prefab we have loaded basically. And we find the target bone, parent it under our target bone, place it in the positions we have saved. Okay, and again finally unparent the target bone. Very simple, especially in comparison with the weapon creator. Okay, it doesn't have to do anything special. It's just we get rid of the whole copy pasting all this stuff manually. Okay, and this is why we're doing all this, because it's more intuitive this way. So of course, after you have created your item, you need to go into the resources manager and add it into your item prefabs. Okay, we've seen the resources manager. There's nothing new to add on this. It's exactly the same and works exactly the same with all the dictionaries and all the lists we have seen in the past. Now, let's see also the audio manager, since we've covered that. However, this is not actually tested. Just keep that in mind, because I do not have any audio, but there's no way why it shouldn't play. So what I have is a class, an audio effects, and as I said, it has the audio clip and a clip ID. we have our whole list and a dictionary, and on start we take everything we have into our list or our audio effects, and in theory every audio key and every audio effects we are using or we have should have a unique ID. Okay, so what I'm doing is, if it already contains the clip ID, our dictionary, okay, we're skipping it, and otherwise we adding it into our dictionary. So when we want to call an audio, it's basically we want to use the audio clip, we try and find the value from our dictionary, and if there is something, then we assign it on the R, and when we return our term value. And it's also of course a singlet on, so that we can easily access it. And the reason why we do this again is so that we avoid going and creating a new variable and assigning all the audio effects manually. So you have 50 weapons that use the same audio effects. If you want to change the audio effects, you do not have to go and change it in all 50 weapons, but you only simply have to go into the resources manager and change it over here. Same with the object pool. Okay, we've seen this on a previous video, so we've covered it. Now another example of all this, and before we actually see on the next video the weapon manager, is on the main menu. We have a character placer and we also have a main menu manager. Into our main menu manager, okay, the character placer is basically where we are placing our weapon, our character, and the target character ID, it updates from decision master. Okay, the character instance is the game object basically, and we have the main menu animator and animator override controller, which is what animator the guy is going to play. Now on start we basically load our settings from our UI manager. Okay, we find our profile, we load the player name, we set up our target character ID, and we also change our own player name into the name input field, and then we load a character. So if we have any previous character instance, this also has to do with loading your characters or selecting your characters. We delete the previous character instance, we find the character container using our target character ID, we instantiate our character prefab, we're placing in the correct position and rotation, we update his animator or his runtime animator controller, if you will, and then on the profile we assign to our own profile that target character ID. So the next time we're going in, we will have the previous character we have selected the next time we load the game. Then we add the bone helper, we add a new class which is called main menu animator, and main menu animator we also assign it over here, and we initialize it by passing our own basically the ID for our own rig. And we do that because main menu animator is going to be responsible for loading also the weapons we have on us. Okay, so this is where we actually see the first time we are going to use our new weapons which we have created from our weapon creator. Animator, okay, bone helper, transform, we only want, since this is only idle, or in my example I only have the idle animations, I'm only going to focus on having the left hand, okay, helper, okay, and our rig type, which again updates from the main menu manager. We pass the target rig, we pass the bone helper and the animator, and we initialize of course with our animator the bone helpers. We load our weapons and then we go on our bone helpers and then call the function we have which parents all the helpers we have under the bone object, so we do not have to worry about updating the bone helper. And yeah, on the previous video I've discussed why and when I use parent all helpers. Okay, so what's that to if you do not want to parent them but regularly update the bone helper. Now, what load weapon is? Of course, first we need to know what are those weapons. So in our case, if we do not have anything in our profile, then that means is either the M4 or the B8 for main weapon and secondary weapon. We need to find our weapon instances, which we do so from the resources manager and using get weapon. Okay, main weapon and a rig type. We're using the strings or the IDs basically. Now, in case we can't find the actual weapon, then we want to do something. We're going to throw a debug log so that you know what to go and change. Okay, and we're going to try and get the default. Same with the secondary weapons. However, if even we cannot find the default ones, okay, then you're going to have an error. So it's going to say to you, you know, go and look at, it hasn't found it. So if you do not even have the default weapons for your rig type, then that means that either your rig type is wrong, or yeah, you haven't assigned everything you have to assign into your resource manager. Same for the for the secondary weapon. Then we have another function that creates the actual weapons, and we will see this in a bit. And we also need to have an IK helper. In this case, we only need the left hand. Okay, so we just create a new game object. We parent it under the right hand helper. Okay, and then we set up his position and his rotation based on what we have saved for our main weapon. Okay, so basically what we have saved from the weapons creator. On animator, again, very easy. If there is no animator, if we have an animator and the left hand IK helper is also not null, then we simply change the IK weight to go and place it where we have saved. Now, create weapon. We pass the weapon instance, and if it also has a holster, if it's a holster or not. Okay, so the main weapon is not, of course, holster. The secondary weapon will be holster. So if it's not a holster, then that means it's the main weapon, which means it's going to go under the right hand. We parent it under the position. We parent it under the local position. We fix the local position to what we have saved into our weapon instance. We fix our rotation based on what we have saved into, again, weapon instance, and same with the scale. So everything we have done in the weapon creator comes down into just going over here and loading items. As simple as that. Okay, now we're only using this for the main menu, but later on, when we have also enemies, okay, we're going to use the exact same code to load weapons for everything that is not the player. The player has a little bit more stuff because, of course, it's the player, and we have to make sure everything else works correct with him. Okay, and if, of course, it's the holster, then instead of parenting under the right hand, it's only going to be parented under the holster bone. And we have our parent, we have our local position, rotations, and scale. So that's our first introduction in how we can use the weapons we have created with our weapon creator. And on the next part, we're actually going to dive deep into the weapon manager, and if we have time, do the IK handler also. Okay, because these are basically 90% of all this are depending on how we set up our weapons, and then how we can actually reuse them and load them and use the IK handler to aim. Okay, so you know what to do. like, subscribe, and if you like more quality videos like this and everything else we have done, then by all means consider supporting me either on Patreon or by grabbing a project or two from Gumroad. Okay, and because people have supported me so much for this series, is why I can actually develop this so much to basically put it simply, bring a whole project into this state, which is almost a complete game. So I'll see you on the next one.